Well, welcome everyone to Get This Rugby Podcast. Legend Chew's here again. How are you, Chew?
There you go. Good to see you.
Get this, and special guest this week, Scotland legend, rugby legend, great bloke, Dan Parks. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Greg. It's great to be on the show.
Yeah, cool.
Mate, I was just talking about something before. We know you played 67 tests for Scotland, mate. We all know that. But what's happened to the art of the drop goal, mate? We thought we'd start with that one for you. What's happened to it?
I don't know, to be honest. It was one of those things. I know with me, my old man used to always say to me, my old man's a mad league fan, so obviously it's only worth 1 point. He always used to go on about, if you get an opportunity in front of the sticks, just take the three. So for me, it was a good way of accumulating points, obviously, and that's why I did it. And I got to be honest, I don't know. There's not many blokes taking on these days, but I guess their first and foremost thought is about scoring 5-pointers. But I don't know, man, because it's a good way to accumulate up a scoreboard, and especially if you're getting inside that 22 a lot and you can't crack the try line. To me, it's
right.
Its way.
I was talking about it before, and it's got me buggered why teams don't do it, especially if you're a good defensive team and you can play a bit of field position, and you're right in front of the sticks. Well, there's nothing wrong with taking 3 points every time you're down there, I reckon.
Well,
a lot of teams would have won games this year had they done stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, a lot of teams are working for a penalty as well to take a shot at that goal.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't make much sense, especially if you're right in front. I think but I think to that point, guys, like, I know when I was playing, like, you'd spend a lot of time on your kicking away from the training ground. So it was in your own time you were doing your own kicking. And I don't know if there's enough guys doing that type of stuff now. I think their focus is probably on other things, as in, more around the skill development of themselves as players, passing, fitness, strength, all that type of stuff. Whereas I guess for me, I just love kicking a footy ball. So it became very instinctive just to do stuff like that. So
on that point, Parksy, I reckon you're dead right with that, because I watch the games every week, and I don't think there's many blokes playing in the shute shield at the moment that are actually even really good punters of the ball. They lots of times fail to find touch. A lot of them haven't got big boots on them. I just think you're dead right. I think maybe they're just not doing as much of it. They're not as good at it.
Yeah. As I said, there's a lot of good kickers out there. I do a lot of work with with school age kids. I work with some of the guys at Newington there, and one of the things that we work really hard on is actually kicking the ball hard. I know it sounds really obvious, but rather than finessing the ball, actually kicking the ball hard and getting used to that motion of getting right through the ball. So you just don't probably see that as, I guess, enough. But then, when someone does come along that strikes the ball really well, they're very, very noticeable.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Well, speaking of that, mate, we thought we might segue straight into last week's games, and Gordon and Norse, mate, you're on the sideline for that game. Now, we've been talking for a while about the Norse 5'8" Jude Gibbs, who, to me, just seems to be stabbing at the ball. What's your opinion on that?
I don't know about necessarily stabbing at it. I was watching him actually warm up pre-game. He got out there nice and early, and he was having a warm up in the in-goal line. I think we all know how big the Chatswood in-goal lines are while the reserve game was going on. And man, I was watching him kick. Like, he was striking his goal kicks beautifully. I think if you look at that, he kicked well on the weekend, 2-goal. Unfortunately, he missed that last one, which could have tied things up. But in regards to his general strike, I think there's a bit of a combination. I know he's had a huge impact on that Norths team. Like, since he obviously came over from uni last year. He was instrumental in getting them to the grand final.
Yep.
He's had an impact, another big impact, but I don't think he's had the same impact as he did last year. But hey, we're getting into the business end of the comm, and I don't know about you guys, any of those 6 teams can win it. So it's about who comes good at the right part of the year.
So talking about that game, Dan, Gordon and Norse, like, even though it ended up close, did you feel like I always felt like Gordon kind of were a little bit better on the day? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was an interesting one. So for me, I thought Norse were in a really decent position at halftime. They only led by a point. the Gordon fly half missed that kick on halftime, which would have got them the lead, which was a bit of a surprise, I thought, in missing. But even still, I still thought Norse would probably go on with it. So for Gordon to literally shut out Norse for 35 minutes in that second half, I think you got to give real credit to how they defended. I was really, really impressed with what they did. And it was a sense of suffocating a team out of a game. But that's
they've been like that all year, mate. I think they've been good like that.
Well, if you look at Gordon's, that's been so Shute Shield generally, there's a lot of big scores. But if you look at last year, Randwick won that comp based off defence. And it's all come down to that again this year, whoever the best team defensively is. And to that point, Gordon, they've been pretty solid in that area. So, and that's where it was a bit of a surprise in the end, as in, especially for Gordon fans, they'd be thinking, well, how do we let them, after doing so well for the majority of the second half, let them back in? But also on the flip side, if you're the Norse coach, you're really impressed with the resilience to stay in it, stay in the fight and not give up. It was an amazing day because reserve grade was exactly the same. Gordon were in control of the reserve grade game. Norse came back at them late, had a chance to win it late. Similar sort of ending where a kick was missed on that left side of the field. So, as I said, there's no way I'm counting Norse out of this competition. I think they're a big hope.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. All you got to do is make the six and you've got to win 3 games. The trouble I'm having at the moment is the way the teams are going in that 6, most of them can't string 3 games together. It seems like they can do it. I don't know which team I'm looking at is going to be able to string 3 games in a row because they all seem to be hot and cold,
Yeah, no, and I think that's a valid point. And that comes back to my point earlier on, I think, as well. Everyone that's in the 6 obviously knows they're in the 6. So that's why these last 2 rounds are really interesting to see how everyone approaches them. Now, the reality is that teams want to have home quarters. So, yes, they want to finish in the top 3. But ultimately, I think it's more important that they have a strong squad leading in rather than potentially picking up injuries leading into it. So I think it's going to be very important who's got the strongest squad, who in particular in key positions, who's fittest, who has those blokes in key positions that are fit. And to your point, Chew, if you can string those 3 games together, even if it means that one of them you're not playing well, but somehow you get over the line, I think that's what's going to be interesting. We might see, for example, a game in the first week where a team is absolutely dominant, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're going to be favourites. There's no way they could lose." And you'll see it. They'll come out the next week, and because you reach, it was almost like the Australian women's, like they were incredible in their match before the semis, and everyone thought, well, they can't. There's no way they can be beaten, and they come out. And very sad for Australian fans, they went down. No one saw that coming. And it could be very similar in the Shute Shield,
Something I want to ask you too is I think some of these finals are going to be close, and I think goal kicking is going to be a huge part of it. Who would you reckon at the moment's got the best kicker out of those 6 teams?
Andrew Deegan, I'd have to say. He's and last year the game was won on Deegan's goal kicking in the grand final. He didn't miss. So, I think, and his stats this year, like every time you look at a Randwick game, like I know the other week, he kicked 10 from 10 down at Southern District. If he missed on the weekend, he might have only missed 1. Excuse me, in that high scoring game against Eastwood. So I'd say he's probably the form kicker. But in saying that, all the other clubs, I think you don't get into a top 6. Excuse me. You don't get into a top 6 if you don't have a good kicker. And I think looking at it, let's sort of go through it. Whiteside, he's been in very good form with a boot at East. Surprised Bowen doesn't kick, but obviously goes to show the quality of the kicker they've got there. Gordon, I'm trying to think of the 10's name. He's only just come in.
Pellegrini.
Yeah, he's been pretty good though, hasn't he?
Yeah,
Patrick. Well, he didn't kick well on the weekend.
Yeah,
but he is a good goal kicker. So and Pollock can kick as well. So I think they got good depth there. Obviously, Norse Jude Gibbs, we know he's capable of kicking well. Manly, is it Owen? I think Owen's their kicker. Would that be correct?
So 10 is there 10 kicks? I think, isn't it?
Yeah, Owen. I think he's reasonably reliable. And then Rats. Well, as a striker of the ball, there's
Brendan,
not better strikers than Kobe Milne. So, if you look at it like that, all teams are pretty blessed, I think, with really good kickers. But on stats, Deegan, I think at the moment, you'd be the one.
He'd have to be kicking at probably 80%, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
I think he's actually higher.
Yeah, right.
So, just on the final thing on that, Dan, like you look at Jude Gibbs and so he's missed that goal in the grand final last year, and he's missed a couple this year, missed one the weekend. Would it start to be messing with his head a little bit?
No, not really. I've, as a kicker myself, I know that, there were certainly kicks I missed in games, in season. And then when you got to the bigger moment, it was almost like a greater feeling or a greater feeling of joy if you actually make them. So as a kicker, when you're growing up, that's the one thing you almost want. You want that pressure moment. Like you might be in your backyard or out the front of your house, going through grand finals on the line, that type of stuff in your head. It's a bit of role play, but that's the way you think. So as a kicker, you want those moments and you almost crave for them. So I don't see any of this playing on these guys' minds. If anything,
fair enough.
It's actually better.
Yep. All right. So
next game, Greg.
Yeah. So that was Gordon 27-25. So we had East 42 over Uni 19. I think East are on about 8 games straight or something at the moment. So obviously we know the points thing is hanging over their head. That's decisions tomorrow. What do you think of that game, Chew? East were pretty much in control.
Yeah, well, Uni got put to bed the week before, and they've been playing almost like they had to win the last 4 or 5 games they played. So they've been playing like a semi every week. I thought they might have been a bit deflated for that game, and East were just too good for them. I thought they Uni probably weren't at their best, and I think they can't make the finals, and East are just a pretty good unit, I thought, and they did it pretty easy in the end.
What do you think, Dan? Did you ever look at the game?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think the reality is it was an East home game. To Chewy's point, Uni weren't really playing for much. Yes, there's a rivalry between East. We all know that. But, East obviously playing in front of the home crowd. They scored in the first 10 seconds, I think they scored.
Yeah.
Which I think sort of set the tone for the day. And
sure did.
That try, there was a lot of high skill in that. And, I think we all know probably their most important player was instrumental that whole afternoon. I think he played 80 minutes too, Teddy Wilson. So, he's an extremely important member. As I mentioned earlier on, if something was to happen, to a player like that and him not be available for the finals, then that East unit, I think, looks a lot different to what it probably looks like.
Right now. They're lucky they got Granny's young bloke on the bench.
Well, that's right.
He'd play first grade probably anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, well, 100% he would be. And I think that's, they're in a pretty fortunate situation. But for me, watching Teddy, he's a really good. I love.
Yeah, he's class act, eh?
He's just class, and he's so dangerous.
And I thought one of the interesting things in that game was almost for the first time this year that Ben Batcher started Chris Bell at 15.
Yep.
That's going to be pretty important in the finals, I think, with Chris's kicking game, and he's another option for kicking.
Yeah, and I think he plays like another 10. So you've got 2 options. You can play both sides of the ruck, obviously with someone like Bell in there. Yeah, he's a quality performer. He's had many wonderful years with Eastwood, and he's followed Batch over. So yeah, at the end of the day, they're just inundated with quality players. I think like 10 Super Rugby players. Anyone that has that is going to be strong. So on paper, East certainly you'd have to say the strongest looking team.
And they can run out. They ran out Derby Lancaster in that game last week. So,
yeah, exactly.
But I'm not sure what amount of points he was on. That might be another issue. So anyway, East were pretty dominant there. Chew, what about the 2 Blues and South game? You went out and had a look, mate?
Yeah, I went out and I got to tell you, that was a pretty poor game of football up. It was at some stages there, it looked like I was watching 3rd grade, to tell you the truth. South have just run out of blokes, basically, and they're looking for the finish line for sure. And Para were fairly depleted as well, and it was not much of an encounter, really. Para did it pretty easy, and there wasn't a lot of tackling going on. And look like two teams really just going through the motions to me. But, Para won comfortably. And I think in South this week, they've got to go to Warringah, I think. Yeah. That could be a long afternoon as well. So, yeah, it wasn't much of a contest, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see much of the game, but obviously this stage of year when you've got two teams playing, obviously for pride, really. Back to Chewy's point about South, a lot of men down, a lot of injuries. Warringah coming off the back of a loss over the Pirates, it's going to be a tough trip up at Rats, I think, this week for South. So that could be interesting to see how that plays out.
Could be a long afternoon, I think.
So, well, that's a good segue into the next game. Dan, the Mighty Pirates 40, Warringah 28. One thing I've got to say before you talk about that is I've got to give the Pirates a rap. I mean, even when they've lost the games this year, they've had a real crack. The club spirit is incredible over there. And, you must have been happy with that, Dan.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was an amazing start to the game. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's worth looking at on Stan Sport for the first opening 90 seconds. There was a clean line break made by Clayton Franz. There was a penalty given to Warringah. They took a quick tap, played a couple of phases, dropped the ball. West got the ball, flung it to the right edge, kicked downfield. Tackle was made 10 metres out from the line. They got a turnover penalty. Like, it was one of those starts to a game of rugby, and you sort of just knew this is going to be a high-scoring game. And that's obviously how it played out. And I've got to say, though, as a rugby fan, Jack Debrasini he's almost a level above Shute Shield. Like, he is a quality player. The difference he has on that team it's just night and day. They had a lot of James Favour was back from his Tonga representative honours, so he was back in the side. And to be honest, they did well. They scored some really good tries. Rats, they kept coming though. They were depleted themselves. Missing Thompson, he's a huge loss for that team, in particular in their pack with their line out. And the two Bens were missing. So Ben Maher and Ben Woollett, I think we all know the energy they bring that Warringah side. So somehow they had to bring it from somewhere else. And I think you could clearly see that was lacking. They'll be desperate to get those guys back, because I think when those boys in particular are in there, Warringah are a different team.
Now, with this Warringah team, I'm really worried about them, because it seems to me the last 5 or 6 weeks, they're nothing like the team they were earlier in the year. They're a bit of a worry going into the semis the way they've been playing, I think.
Well, again, I think we all, I think as a spectator, we knew Warringah were going to be better this year. I don't think anyone thought they'd be as good as what they've been. But you could see the impact Kobe Milnes had on the team. Obviously, he's been an extremely important member of that group. Franz, I've been really impressed with watching him play, the guy that's come down from Hunter. They've had some really interesting additions that have made a huge difference to them. And I think it's one of those things. They might be going through a little bit of a stale period, but the good thing is they come up against South this week if they can potentially get some momentum.
It's probably doing good, that game.
Yeah, so, I'm not saying they're guaranteed a victory, but if they could, put a good performance in, get a win, then get a home quarter, everything changes. It's a fresh new competition. And to your point, you've just got to win 3 games. So,
that's it.
There's no team I'm counting out, because we've seen what the competition's like.
Yep. So I'm just last on that game, Dan. I was looking to get your opinion. Young Hunter Hannaford really seems to be progressing pretty well. Good young talent. Yeah.
So he's a very versatile player. I think he's by definition he's a fly half. So he's been spending the majority of the season there, and I think when you got the likes of James Favour, Jack Debrasini in the group, it just made him relax and be able to play natural footy. And he played at 15. What I've been really impressed with Hunter is when he straightens his attack, he looks really, really dangerous. It's when he's on the drift that it becomes a bit more predictable. But he certainly, when he straightens his attack, he's a real danger man. And West have only had the 3 wins, and every time West have had a win, he's been very important. And I think if we go back to round 6, when they had their first win over Eastwood, like he he set up basically 3 of their tries.
Yeah, he did.
On the back of him looking dangerous with ball in hand. So I think he's had a great year. It's a shame West haven't obviously had a few more results, which I'm sure they would have liked. But to your point, Greg, I think there's only been a couple of games where they've probably performed poorly, and unfortunately, both of those were against Sydney University. But besides that,
they've
been pretty much in every other game.
Yeah, it's funny about that. They usually got the wood over uni too,
Yeah. So the next game, boys, was the upset at Coogee. Eastwood beating Randwick. To quote Hoylesy, he just said we didn't play well enough on the day, and Eastwood did. So pretty much it.
Wow. I couldn't believe that the end of that game, and I wouldn't have. We both picked Randwick last week. I thought they would have taken care of business, and they didn't. They didn't. And Eastwood had a big go. I thought they would, but I thought Randwick could get them in the second half, and Randwick just let them back into that end of the game and stuff. It was really unlike that Randwick team with their defence and stuff. And it was a bit of a mystery, that one at Coogee.
Yeah, it's funny how some teams are suited to playing against other teams.
Yeah.
That's where, when you look at the table, some of the games they don't really make, as in you look at them and think, how is that possible? I think it's because, again, different styles of play, doesn't matter where you're on the comp, you could be suited against certain teams. But I think that was a classic example. Eastwood, they had a real go. They probably sensed something was in the air that Randwick, they only have to be off a couple of percent, 1 or 2 players not at their best. And, when you're playing at that level, it doesn't take much because it's such a fine line. And, once you get a sniff, you can beat, that's what I'm saying. Last can beat first in this shute shield. That's how tight it is. And obviously Eastwood, had a sense of something, and I give them full credit. They've
been close in a lot of games.
Mate, you got to give Dave Telfer first year in charge. He's been doing Colts at Eastwood, had good success there. And, it's a big ask for him to take on the first grade job. And, I think he's lost a lot of players as well, as we all know. A lot of players went over.
Big rebuilding team.
He's blooded a lot of young players, which is good.
Well, we've been talking about this during the year. Like in round 1, they debuted 10 guys, and it's a rebuilding year, but they've got a good young side there. I think they're going to be good next year. I think they're going to be moving up the ladder. So it was a great effort from the Woods. The final game, boys, was up in Newcastle, Manly 31-22. It was a pretty tough battle, but I think Manly just did enough in this. Chew, did you have a look?
Yeah, I did. Manly, like we've spoken about during the year, Parksy, you'd probably like this. The Manly coach must just be like getting therapy and stuff, because they're a really good team, and some weeks they just come out and they're terrible, and then they play well the next week, and they you never know which one's going to turn up. And he must be aged a lot this year, I think, the Manly coach. But Newcastle, look, they've been a big disappointment for me this year. I really thought they were going to go a lot better. And I think it'd be great if they did go better, because it'd be good for rugby. But Manly, they're another team on their day. I think they're very good, and there'll be a big test for them this week coming up too. But they're in, and Newcastle aren't, and I'm a bit worried about Newcastle.
Yeah, I think with Manly, so Chris Deleuze, obviously the head coach, I often catch up with him. He my daughter's school, it's his local cafe, so we quite often catch up for a coffee. And yeah, he's obviously had his ups and downs this year, but I think ultimately, we've said it already, but they're in that top 6. They're playing this week for a home final. And, to go up to Hunter, my understanding was Rob Pugliava's last game. So he's retiring at the end of the year. So it was a big day up at Hunter. So, there would have been a lot of emotion around that game. So that wouldn't have been easy for Manly. And, if Hunter potentially, they could have got away with that one. But, I think you've got to give Manly a bit of credit there, because that's, as we all know, it's not an easy place. Again,
sure.
High on emotion. So they did it, and they come up this week against Norths at Manly Oval, and it's all to play for them.
Yeah, so so that was the round, boys. So the table pretty much didn't change much except that Manly went up to third. So that was a big jump for them.
What are the points, Greg? You got them there?
So East 68, obviously pending, hopefully losing 5 points tomorrow. Warringah 62, Manly 62.
Yeah.
Randwick and Gordon 61, and North 58.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, we're prepared to make a call, boys. I mean, I'm just got a funny feeling Manly could be a smoky for this premiership. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, early in the year we thought that, and then they went through this hot cold stuff for so long. You know, some of the games where they just had shockers. There's probably 3 or 4 games Manly dead set should have won. They would have came first easy. It's just I just hope now maybe they've turned a corner, and if they get through this week, and because I think on their day they're really good. I just like Parksy says, I'm looking at all of those. Norse is probably the only team I think might have trouble, but most of them, I think anyone can win it.
I think with I think going into this week, you know, for Manly, and I think not necessarily this week, sorry, more in previous years gone by, a lot of people have said, yeah, Manly getting into the finals. Well, they're basically done. You know, we can,
August, September.
Yeah, they're not going to compete. But I think in a way this year, because they've had the turbulence in the middle of the season, maybe that's going to play the right. Maybe Christolou's it's a masterstroke. He's gone through all that during the year, and he's looking at, okay, they've had a good win on the weekend over Hunter. You know, if they can back it up this week against Norse, get real momentum going into the final series, you know, like that's somewhere that Manly haven't been in previous years. So that could be really, I think, instrumental in potentially them having success in this final series and actually getting, or going all the way to the grand final and potentially winning it. So.
Yeah.
And Greg, you gave me an interesting stat the other day. Manly haven't won a semi-final since when?
2015.
There you go.
But I think it's fascinating this year. You got 2 teams in the finals. Like East haven't won a premiership for 55 years, and Manly haven't won since what? I think it's 97. So it's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, we might move on to this round because we know, Parks, you've got to shoot off about 15:15. So I thought we'd get straight in. Let's talk about the Manly North game straight up. So are we thinking that both teams are going to treat this, Parksy, like a semi-final, or do you think maybe not? It's interesting how it's going to go.
You talk about the Manly North game?
Manly North game, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, back to my point earlier on, I think if anyone's carrying any niggles, I would suggest they'd probably be rested, because the last thing you want is for them to get worse and then not to be available in the finals. But I think for Manly in particular, they're in a position to finish in the top 3, and I reckon it's pretty important if you can get a home quarter. So there's no doubt. Like, I was at the ground last week, the Gordon Norse game, and it had a finals feel to it. It really did. The hits in defence were well and truly up. The crowd's involvement was there. It was a real parochial atmosphere for both sides. So yeah, I've got a feeling Manly Oval will be packed. I reckon both sides will be more or less desperate for victory. So there's no reason why it wouldn't be. But I still think if players are carrying, a few little niggles, then if I'm a coach, I'm probably resting them, because it's more, obviously next week is way more important.
I think Norse have had the problem this year too. They've been missing a few blokes for a lot of the year, and I think they've got some guys coming back this week, but they've really been lacking in the back row. And I don't know if Sinclair playing this week, Greg, I'm not sure.
I don't know if the teams have come out yet. They normally come out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was there last week. He played last week.
Yeah. Hopefully he plays again. But I just think, man, I'd have to go for Manly in this game. I just think they might just be too strong at Manly Oval.
I'm gonna pick Norse. I think. I reckon. Right. I think Norse might. Again, just having a chat with some of the players, I know that they had a bit of an unsettled lineup for a few weeks there, but they had their team. They had their team back, I think, near enough to full strength last week. And it was a tough game against Gordon, but I think they showed a lot in that last 5 minutes to suggest that they're they want to go one better this year. So I reckon for them, it's important to get a win and get momentum into the finals. So I reckon it could be a real tight game, but I reckon they might win it.
Oh, yeah. I'll put you down for North.
I'm tipping Manly in this game. No real reason except for Manly Oval. I think for North, if they can possibly do it, they need to get Gary Bortz in that team somewhere. I don't know if he's fit or otherwise, but
he was playing reserve grade on the weekend, so he was there.
Yeah, they really need him at the breakdown. They're really lacking at the breakdown since they lost that other 7, and he gives them a bit of a spark, I think.
Terrific player, underrated for so many years. Gary, real workhorse.
The funny thing is, I picked North to win the comp at the start of the year, and sure, they probably still can, but yeah, interesting.
Interesting game. So, what about some of the other games, Chew? Like, all the other games don't really have a bearing on the finals, but I still think teams obviously be looking for a good performance.
Well, East and West at Wallara, because the decision comes down tomorrow, doesn't it, about whether they get deducted points?
Yeah.
So that could have an interesting impact on the game if they lose 5 points tomorrow, and West going to be able to play it on the carpet over there at East. It's a hard place to go to, I reckon. We reckon, Parksy?
Oh, I can see this one being a very, very high-scoring game. I can just see it being like that. To your point, it's on the carpet. It looks like it's going to be good weather. Obviously, West got nothing to lose. East, depending on how things go tomorrow, I think it could be just one of those games where end-to-end, lots of points scored, plenty of entertainment for the crowd. A 50-all draw.
Could be.
I wonder, I was thinking, would East rest some blokes? Possibly. But then you think they've got such a strong bench, they can rotate blokes quite easily.
Yeah. I would say that would be, again, Batcher's probably thinking the same. He doesn't want to risk anyone getting injured leading into the final. So to that point, if there's anyone that's suffering any sort of niggle, they might look at resting because they have such great depth. Like, I think every grade is minor premiers except for second Colts, maybe. Like, that's... And with a week to go, like, that's an incredible statistic. Like, that's incredible.
Sure is.
It just goes to show the strength of where they're at. But, you got to take your hat off to them. And
I got to take East in this one.
Yeah, East for me.
Who you got, Parksy, a draw or going East?
Well, mate, obviously I'm wanting West to win.
Going West.
But, yeah, as I said, I think it'll be an entertaining game either way.
Yeah.
I'm tipping an upset here. I'm tipping the Pirates.
Oh, yeah? Right.
Pirates by 10.
You
know what,
Parksy? But I don't think they will.
Can you confirm this, mate? Is there any bad blood? Because there's been a bit of a checkered history this year between the two. You reckon, is there any bad blood between the teams?
Oh, mate, if there is, I don't know anything about it. I think at the end of the day, mate, everyone, generally what happens on the pitch stays on the pitch. But, yeah, from my side of things, mate, I've stayed well and truly away if there is. But, mate, it should be. I think it's going to be a cracker this weekend. I really do. I'm excited for
it.
Yeah. Are you calling that game?
No, I'll be at the ground. Last game of the year, obviously, for the Pirates. So I'll be there.
Are you going to be doing some of the semis?
Yes, indeed. I hope to be. Yeah. So hopefully I'll be on the sidelines for some of the games.
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
Good one.
And you know what? I have to give you a rap, Parksy, one of the best commentators, probably just below Luke. Luke the legend, but mate, I enjoy your commentary because when you commentate, I feel energized, mate.
Good. That's my whole purpose, mate.
You get very excited.
Well, I think, mate, sure, you know me for a long time. I get excited over the little things. But I do get excited, and I think it's important to try and make the game sound more exciting than what it actually is.
Oh, mate, I get it always. It's funny. I dig it.
All right. So what about Gordon and Two Blues too? Are we fearing for the Two Blues this week, or Gordon might West Blakes too? I don't know.
At Chatswood, Para's in all sorts of strife. I just think Gordon will just take care of business there. I reckon. I just can't see any other result. Whether they rest players, whatever they do, I can't see them not winning this game. I just think they'll be too good, and they want to stay in that top three. and they can't. They can't really afford. Well, if they win this, they could be in the top three. They're not at the moment, but I think they'd like to win this and go into the semis on a good note. It wouldn't be good going into the semis losing to Para at home. So I'd have to go Gordon in this one.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think it's a huge game for Gordon, and you'd think they will win this game. But that's the way I think touched on the games this weekend. Potentially, I think Randwick are just ahead of Gordon on for and against. So we're sure going to get to that. But if Randwick do win and potentially Manly were to lose, I think, and Gordon won, Gordon would still miss out on the third. If the other results go the way. So, for example,
Manly are 1 point in front of Gordon. Yeah. Depends,
And I think Randwick's
it's probably going to be tough for them to make it.
Yeah, bonus points are going to be a big one this week.
It's only a home game the first round, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second round will probably be Rat Park or something. All right, so what about Randwick and Hunter? Like Randwick.
Who you got, mate? You got Gordon in that one, Greg?
Oh, yeah, Gordon for me, yeah.
Righto.
So Randwick and Hunter at Coogee. Randwick will be looking to get back on the horse here, surely. Looking for a big win.
Yeah, I think there's no question about that. And, as I mentioned before, Hunter had their last game last week at home and it was a rather disappointing loss to Manly. But, yeah, they'll come down. They'll have plenty of energy early in the game. But knowing Randwick, I'm sure they'll stick at it. To your point earlier on, Halsey's probably given them a decent serve this week. And I'm sure they'll have a response.
Oh, yeah. Newcastle, they're always... Look, I just don't know what's going on with them this year, and I really thought they'd go a lot better, and I think they'll be pretty happy when the final whistle goes on Saturday and start thinking about next year. But they'll stay in it for probably half the game. But I'd say Randwick will stamp their authority on this game pretty early, and I'd suggest the second half could get ugly.
Yeah, Randwick for me. Should be. I mean, if they don't win this week, I'm not tipping them again. The next game for me, I think, will just be a really good game of footy. Sydney Uni and Eastwood. I think this will be an indication of what it's going to be like next season. I think they'll really have a go at each other in this game.
What about that stat I asked you about last week? When was the last time Uni missed the semis 2 years in a row in first grade? I'd say to be a while ago.
In the 90s, apparently.
Any knowledge on that, Parksy?
No, I think to Greg, what Greg just said, I'd say it'd have to be somewhere in the 90s.
I think it'd be the 90s, yeah.
Long while.
Yeah, it's been a long while. But I think that will be a fascinating game, and both very proud clubs that they'll want to finish the season on a high. So, yeah, I think of all the games this weekend, you've probably got Manly and Norse. I think in this one will probably be potentially a close second sort of in regards to a real tight battle. I'll be interested to see this game, but yeah, I think Uni potentially could win that one.
Yeah, I'll probably tip Uni in this game. Yeah, just because they're at home, but it'll be close. I think it's going to be a very close game.
You know what? I'm going to go Eastwood in this one, just because they're young and keen, and they've had the year's been especially hard early, and they've come good. They're coming off a big win. I just think they might be on a bit of a high, and I think they might get up in this one. And I think both teams might chuck it around a bit in this one.
Yeah.
Just on that point as well, I think it's worth noting. We've talked about Eastwood, how young they are. I think you said to Uni this year, there is a lot of young players in that team.
Yeah,
they've flooded a lot of guys. If you look at Joey Fowler at 10, he's only 19 years of age. Jack Matthews, his first year in first grade, I think he's 21 now, Jack. You got the experience sprinkled in there with, Henry Clinties-Ross, Jack McCalman, these type of blokes, but there's a lot of young players coming through in that group. So to that point, they're blooded as well. So I think Uni will, in the years to come, they'll get back.
You know a bit about, they've got some couple of pretty good Colts teams this year, haven't they?
Yeah, they're up there. They'll come second, I think, in first grade Colts. I think they're potentially minor premiers in twos Colts.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of. They recruited very heavily in the school system this year, and obviously that's only going to bode well for their future.
Oh yeah, they'll probably be strong the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
A little tidbit for the uni club for next year. I've heard a rumor recently that Rob Taylor's coming back in some capacity, so that'll be a big inclusion if that's true. I'm hearing it is. Apparently not head coach, but he's going to come back in some capacity, I believe. I haven't heard that, Dan, anywhere.
I haven't heard that, but all I can say about Rob is I think he's got one of the most incredible win records.
Unbelievable.
Coaching at club rugby level, so that'll be huge.
Yeah. So the last game is Rats and South. Chew. Are we fearing for the? I'm fearing for the Rebels boys this week, mate. I don't know, but they often surprise me.
I after seeing them last week, it was something I thought would happen come about June, July this year with South. They just absolutely haven't got any backup players. They had a team, and I think they're just about out of personnel at the moment, and they're going to field a team this week with not a lot of experience and nothing behind them. Like they'll be lucky if they've got anyone sitting on the bench. It hasn't played second grade all game or something, and going to Warringah, and I'd say Warringah will be pretty keen to win this one. After the way they went last week, I think South will stick it to them for early on, but I just can't see this turning out too well for them in the end. I have to go Warringah in this one.
Yeah, Warringah easy for me.
Yeah, again, I don't. I'm not too up to date with all the issues or player as in injuries at South, but I think on the back of Warringah going down last week, some players back in at Rat Park, they'll be very, very hard to beat. So I would suggest Warringah will win that one.
Oh, that'll be good. So that'll be round 8. So just before you go, Parks, you just give us a 60-second thought on the Wallabies versus South Africa on Saturday. What's your thoughts there?
I'm looking forward to it. I've been really impressed with how the Wallabies have started their campaign under Joe Schmidt. I think, I personally had a little bit to do with Joe when I was living in Ireland. He was, when I was living over in the UK playing over there. And I know how professional he is, how thorough he is. So I knew he would have a huge impact once he arrived, and I think that's pretty evident. He's 3 from 3. Comes up against his first real stern test this weekend against the Springboks. But again, what I'm liking is I'm liking the teams he's picking. Like, people aren't being like, oh, that's ridiculous. What about that call? It's people that you'd expect to be picked, and he's picking the strongest teams. And I think this week, there's no question that's a very strong-looking team. Whether or not we'll be tough enough up front, we'll see. We know how tough South Africa in particular are up front. So just hope the backs get enough ball. And if they do, it'd be great to see them come up against the Box backs. But, I love watching the back three from the Wallabies. That Tom Wright is very entertaining to watch. So hopefully he'll get lots of ball, and, it'll be an entertaining game.
Definitely. And, Carlo Tizzano formerly from West Harbour making his debut. What a great moment, mate.
He's been, really consistent over the years with West playing. He's had a wonderful year. I think he's a top tackler in Super Rugby this year. I think the stat was over at the Western Force. So it's great to see, and that's the beauty of Joe Schmidt. Like he looks at all the players. He knows every single player, not just from the team he's coaching. He knows every player literally in the world. As I go back to that attention to detail piece, he'll be all over the South Africans. He'll have a few tricks up his sleeve. So, I reckon they could go all right this Saturday.
No worries.
No worries. What do you say,
right.
Chew? I think we could potentially win the game because we had a good record against South Africa and Australia. I
haven't seen much of them this year, the South Africans, and so I'm not sure what to expect. But they're just going to come out and be really, really tough up front, and that's going to be the big test because, I didn't think the Wales games were that physical a contest, and this one will be, I believe. And it'll be a good test for us. Where's it? He's Brisbane, isn't it?
Brisbane, yes, Suncorp.
Yeah.
Daytime sold out.
Yeah. look, I'd suggest we'll go pretty well, but I think they might be a bit of a surprise packet when they get here because they played. Who did they play? They only played some obscure nations, didn't they?
Yeah, recently. Yeah, they played Portugal.
Yeah, and so I don't know whether that was a good indication of how good South Africa are. So they have been good the last couple of years. So yeah, it'd be a big test for us, that's for sure.
And one of the selections I really applaud is Luke Reimer on the bench from the Brumbies. He spent most of the year in the Brumbies from the bench, but tell you what, some of the times when he comes on the field, makes a real difference. Great over the ball. He's got 2 genuine sevens in that side, so I think that's an indication we're going to go pretty hard at the breakdown. What do you reckon, Chew?
Yeah, I guess. I like the look of that bloke too, and I think it's good playing them first up because it's going to toughen us up for the rest of the campaign, I think, and it'll be a good hit out. And win, lose or draw, I think we'll get a lot out of this game.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Luke Reimer, he spent his early years for the Rats, then goes to Brumbies, mate. I've been saying all week, it's proof that the Shute Shield's still the elite competition in Australia, in my opinion.
Definitely.
So, it's great to see a bloke like that getting picked. Incredible, actually.
For sure.
Well, that pretty much brings us to the end.
All right.
Thanks, Parksy.
We're just about done. Parksy, you're still running on time. You okay?
No, all good, mate. I appreciate that, guys. It was lots of fun, and let's hope for a awesome last round and then a really exciting semi-final series.
Mate, we might try and get you on during the semis at some stage.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come on, guys. Good
on you, mate.
Thanks,
much
Parksy.
appreciated.
Legend bloke. Cheers. Have a great week.
All right. See you, mate. Cheers.
All right. Remember, guys, to like and subscribe our page, and special thanks to Dan Parks. Have a great week. Enjoy your club rugby. Thanks, guys.
See you.